Coming up, Roger versus Bobbyex.
我只是觉得我带的牌组基本上算还可以，因为我自己认为就是你带的牌只要是能跟对手至少有50%，我觉得就已经算是很好的带牌。
So for Roger, he went with a similar lineup to me, but I teched for aggro, and he stayed with his very greedy tech.
我觉得这个对局可能就稍微我会优势一点，因为我们基本上有3套牌都一样，然后他是德鲁伊，我是术士，那我觉得我们可能会都是，对啊，就是基本上因为我是术士，他是德鲁伊，所以我觉得就是术士打德鲁伊，我觉得稍微是优势一点，所以我大概胜率会比他高一点点吧。
So statistically, I'm not too favored against Roger, but he's not very familiar about my style of play. He's obviously been in the scene a long time, so I've had the chance to just analyze his play. It might be a little bit scary for him because it's going to be more difficult for him to just read into what I'm thinking during the match.
Back with the final match of the day here at the HCT Winter Championship. I'm Raven, and joining me to send off the day is Sottle, of course. Are you looking forward to this one? It is going to be Bobbyex versus Roger, as you've just seen on the screen.
It is, and it's something just a little bit different in terms of the style of matchup we're going to see. We've seen a lot of series, I believe, neck on the line, every series has been a story of one very favored lineup. Like in terms of the triangle of, you know, aggro control, anti-control on the rotation, there's always been, you know, one of the hard favorites in each series. Whereas now we have two very similar lineups, both going with kind of an anti-control strategy. There are little differences in the exact decks that they chose to bring to execute that, though.
Yeah, and even a difference level in player, I would say as well, because Bobbyex, a relatively new name to you know, to the competitive scene and probably to a lot of the viewers at home if you didn't manage to catch the playoffs. But Roger's a player who's had, you know, years of Hearthstone competitive experience. So not only you know, the deck's looking a little bit similar, on the, you know, the other side of that, the two players couldn't be more different, I would say.
Yeah, and I was interested in the break there, and we got a few words from Bobbyex, and he was kind of trying to spin that to his advantage. He said, you know, because of the way the decks line up, like maybe I don't quite have the advantage in the series, but I think what might work for me is that he's not familiar with my style of play and my patterns of play. And I'm just not quite sure how much I buy into that, but he's definitely, you know, willing to play the underdog card here, it seems.
Yeah, and also something that, I don't know, it's kind of made me just like Bobbyex, even though I've not had a chance to hang out with him more. We can see the deck list, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm going to finish my story first. But,
Shelve that!
You know what? ISO back on me. I'll take a page out of TJ's book.
No, never again.
And well, I was just gonna say, when we saw his winning interview at playoffs when he qualified, and he talked a lot.
Oh yes,
he talked a lot, and
yes,
that's not, you know, a bad thing. I'm not saying that in a negative way, but when we interviewed him, could we interview all the players at championships as well?
Yeah,
he talked a lot, and he has a lot to say, and it is, you know, it's interesting. It's not like I'm saying he blabs around a lot, but he's a, you know, he likes to talk and does it well, basically. So I'm a little bit afraid for my job right now. If this doesn't pan out for Bobbyex, I'm kind of worried.
Again. Pulling back the curtain, I feel like I should just be like the masked caster, secrets of casting exposed. But like, if you ramble in an interview and aren't saying anything, we'll cut you off and ask another question. Tell you. But Bobbyex just went on and on and on for about, I don't know, it must have been 45 seconds to a minute on one question that Admirable and myself asked him. We were just happy to let him go because he was saying interesting, engaging things. You know, he has a lot to say about Hearthstone and is clearly very passionate about it.
Yeah, and we did see the quick breakdown of the archetypes, but let's just dive in a little bit deeper. Sol, you said there wasn't a particularly clear favorite. You know, expand.
I think there is a marginal favorite. I think the even lock that Roger has here is actually potentially to his benefit in this series.
Admirable will be fuming.
I know. It's a bit of a departure from what we've been talking about for what feels like several months now, where we've been painting even lock as the weak link. But as I said, they're both going for the anti-control strategy. So they both have a Death Rattle Hunter. They both have a Quest Rogue. Those are the kind of two of the best decks that you will put together for that kind of strategy. They then both have the Xerix Priest on top of that, but then they differ on the final deck, which is Malagos Druid for Bobbyex, and it is Evenlock for Roger, which are two decks, again, that kind of do the same functional job in beating up slower decks, but have very, very different ways of going about it. Mali Druid kind of saves up for that huge burst combo at the end, whereas Evenlock is all just about big, explosive, consistent pressure with big minions throughout the game.
Right, and I've got a quiz question for you.
Oh no!
No, this
Pressure.
is not even lore related.
Okay.
Okay, this is like your kind of lore, I guess. What do these two decks that we're about to see now, the Druid and the Quest Rogue, have in common?
They're both Hearthstone decks. They both play 0 mana spells. They
Nope.
both have the letter R in the classes of the being played.
Nope. Unlike Bobbyex, this is boring me now.
Okay.
I will say they've both been heavily hit by the nerf bat and still exist somehow. As we talked about Rogue a little bit earlier in the match recast, but Druid as well has taken multiple beatings, not just in the recent ramp era of the Nourish and the Wild Growth getting nerfed, but also way back when Spreading Plague, believe it or not, used to be more powerful. I know newer players will not believe it.
I'd honestly forgotten about that.
Yep.
It never occurred to me that Spreading Plague is a card that's already been nerfed. It's like Corridor Creeper tier, right? Like
Yes.
the original Spreading Plague.
Like, why is this okay?
Ah.
Who agreed to this? But yeah, let's get into the game. It is the Quest Rogue versus the Mali Druid. And it's kind of, as I mentioned about the nerfs, it's kind of an old-new matchup. As we've seen this happen before, but not with these two exact decks.
Right.
But how do you think it goes now as we start to see the players opening hands?
Honestly, some amount of question marks on that front. The nerf to 4/4 had one relevant interaction in this matchup, which was particularly Spreading Plague. When you have a board of 4/4s, suddenly 1/5 taunts are a lot more annoying than they used to be as to when you had 5/5s. But I'm mostly familiar with this matchup kind of in the Azalina form, where that was a huge impact on the matchup. But honestly, I think with these, how much slower Druid has got now with 3 mana Wild Growth, 6 mana Nourish, that's just a couple of free turns that Rogue gets to develop through to pressure and quest and be able to run over. And you look like you have something incredibly funny to say over there.
Maybe only I'll laugh. But when you talk about the importance, the 4/4s of Spreading Plague, all I could think was the Rusty video of, well, if you're branching past them, you can draw Swipe. And it kills them. And it wouldn't have done them as 5/5s.
Okay, no, that is quite funny.
First time for everything. Okay, though, this Tyrant can come down pretty easily here and also just kind of battle for this board, to be completely honest. The Dagger plus the Minstrel will clear it off, but if Roger wants to commit that much to it, when you might want to try and do some other turns that might not involve Dagger, because the Dagger isn't live, which means that, nearly half of his mana cost for this turn would be just equipping it.
Right. Elven Minstrel going as far back as you care, really, before either of these decks were nerfed for the very first time. Elven Minstrel has always been a key card in the matchup.
Yes.
It's one of those matchups where you have to stay resource heavy in hand so you can transfer that resource into pressure on the Druid. If you start starving yourself of cards, suddenly, Spreading Plagues can just buy too much time for the opponent and they can swing the board with some kind of big Mali blowout. If you can keep resources high, that means you're going to complete the quest quicker because you have more options to be able to do so. That means the Druid's on the back foot the whole time, just kind of scrambling for mana to be able to make something happen.
Right, and honestly, jokes aside, how reasonable do you think a Spreading Plague into branching past potential push for lethal is actually in this matchup? Because Rogue always goes wide. Its whole point of winning the game is a lot of minions.
Often, because there is no real use for the card Vanish in the matchup, you will often see Vanish hit on the Spreading Plague turn for that kind of similar reason. You probably burn some cards first and foremost, and you give your opponent a bunch of fairly trashy minions when they have to play them one by one in their hand. So quite often, you can trade through maybe 3 of the taunts on board and vanish the others if there's not a hand size problem for the opponent, and you can just reset with more 1 mana 4/4s on the board after that. So there's plenty of game in Quest Rogue to be able to deal with Spreading Plague and prevent that counter push. Quite often, what you're looking for as the Druid, if you don't just get to save up for lethal in the Dream World, which of course is plan A, it always is. If you don't get to save up for that, you're looking for a Mali swing turn. Like Mali, clear the board with a swipe, make them answer that you're Mali. If they can't, they die.
Seems reasonable to me. At the moment, though, Bobbyex does have to piece together something a little bit more active than all of the spell damage cards and none of the things that buff them.
Yes.
So this branching pass could be used just to cycle, depending on what this draw is off the top. Maybe this branching pass could be used for cycle, I don't know.
So many options!
Your move, Bobby, your move.
Yeah, and this is the problem with drawing all your 2-ofs is just functionally your hand is actually half the size, right? Like in terms of different things that you can do, you have so few options when you keep drawing multiple copies of the same card.
Well, this is a tough one because Roger's got off to a pretty good start, as you talked about earlier, but his hand size is fantastic right now. He has minions on the board, which, although small, are still pushing a good amount of damage, to be honest. And now, are the swipes used to remove this? You'd like to hope not if you were Bobby. But what else is he going to do? That's the problem. Does he want to branching pass just to draw and then kind of pass the turn? Because there isn't a lot he's going to draw into that is actually active this turn.
I like this play. Very, very aggressive. Of course, he was only dealing with 2 health minions, so this was almost just the optimal way to do it, essentially. But I like just pushing through damage, because if he can just get a little bit more chip damage in, suddenly he's threatening a Malagos draw for lethal with double Moonfire in his hand. So I like just making Roger panic just a little bit here. Of course, there's no damage permanence against Quest Rogue. They're one of the few rogue decks that really do have the resiliency and healing. They have Vicious Scale Hides to get them out of range, and they also have that Valera, which can prevent a key turn lethal coming out from Druid, because the spells are targeted. They do have to be pointed at face. It's not Mind Blast or anything like that.
Right, and there is a small opening for Bobby if he does draw Mali, literally next turn. He can get it down before Valera's going to be live. Yeah. And also, most importantly, Vicious Scale Hides are great and almost give unlimited healing to the Quest Rogue in some sense. But until that quest is active, live, and ready to go, they do very, very little.
Right.
Prep is there, though, so once this quest is active, we saw it was 3. But so far, that's going to be number 4. And it looks like the prep into the Vanish is going to be number 5.
So I think the reason this is happening, this is a loose usage of Vanish, let's call it that. Just a loose usage of Vanish. Just using it to bounce one single minion. Like I said, it can be very valuable for dealing with the very irritating Spreading Plague in the matchup. But I think you kind of alluded to it. Bobbyex does have a window here where he could just drop Malagos this turn. So Roger needed to set up a turn where if Malagos does come down, he has the potential to deal with it. And there's no way he has potential to deal with Mali unless he completes Quest. So he was willing to sacrifice anything that turn, up to and including his Vanish, to make sure the quest was done. Not just because Quest good, completing it sooner better, but he specifically needed to be able to deal with Malagos this turn.
Right, and now we can see the branching pass go down for armor, because guess what? Ultimate Infestation and even an Arcane Tyrant are there, locked, loaded, and ready to go. But this now gives Roger his own window of, if Roger has an inkling that there's going to be a UI coming next turn, well, that kills one. What about the rest? Because you could just be dead anyway, even with all that armor.
Looks like he is going to slow play, though. No more additional development. Making sure he holds on to some of these fast minions, the Russian charge minions, from hand again, so he can potentially take care of that Malagos if it does come down. And if he's not going to develop anything else, he caught his sequencing at the last moment, just in case he drew something that would make him not play Quest that turn. I guess he could Mimic Pod into Prep number 2, right? It'll make it worth it.
Well, we talked a lot about how current Quest Rogue beats Spreading Plague. Well, they have... Oof, that's unfortunate. They have a Rogue Swipe, also known as Fan of Knives, that is going to help actually get through that Spreading Plague if and when Roger chooses to go wide and almost expects at least one Spreading Plague to be in hand by now. 9 cards left in the deck. So you realize how quickly both these decks draw.
Oh, yeah.
We blinked and they've got less than 10 cards now.
Yeah,
it's like, whoa, okay.
I think it's always surprising, particularly with Quest Rogue, just how many cards they can draw, because, Mimic Pod and Novice Engineers, that's about it, right? Sometimes there's fans in there, sometimes there isn't, but because there's so many ways to recycle those effects, like, suddenly you find them drawing masses of cards very quickly.
Bit of a savage sap coming down there and just really putting a stop sign on Bobbyex, because there's just... Now, 10 mana is not enough mana to get things done, which is the issue, right? Where is this dead turn to just drop Malagos and hope? It doesn't really exist with this much pressure on the board from Roger. And the problem is the turn you buy using Spreading Plague, you can't do anything else, so you still need a turn to do Mally, and we can see the Fan of Knives is only going to stop Roger for one single turn.
Yeah, the Spreading Plague just doesn't really feel like progress here, right? It feels just like a stopgap that you need in order to stay alive just one more turn.
It's the Freeze Mage conundrum.
Yeah. Yeah, it's no good Frost Novering if you're not making any progress in the same turn.
I don't know how he does make progress. That's the problem. I don't know if he even has the tools right now to do that.
I'm not seeing it. I'm kind of scanning the hand back and forth, looking for some answers that allows him to progress somewhat.
I guess Druid just needs a deal 4 to the board AoE.
Yeah. So he could have gone a best Mally, Moonfire Naturalize, and it still leaves 12 on the board to kill the Mally. Like that's right. No kind of play.
And with no Flabidinous Floop in hand, you're not even opening up a chance
right.
at finishing the game. But also, double swipe, double Moonfire gun. Why do you even need Mally anymore?
Ooh, there is the Vanish as well now. With all of these bouncers on the board, that's so much damage going through.
Well, I wonder as well, do you actually... killing off this Plague and then having Vanish just loaded for a worst case another Plague.
That's what I was referring to.
It's huge, right?
It's just he has the Fan of Knives for the answer there, but then with that Vanish draw, it means that even if he has to plow through another pile of Spreading Plague, he has Vanish and a handful of charges that can just finish the game.
Could just not bother trading them a Vanish anyway, but as we said a couple of turns ago, it was not looking good for Bobbyex, and that continued to be the trend as Roger takes game number 1 in a pretty convincing fashion. I do have to say, there just wasn't a lot Bobbyex could do about it. Double swipe, double Moonfire, double branching paths. Those are not, as you said, the 2 ofs you want in the deck. You need to get to your endgame faster than the road can, and Bobby could not.
Yeah, if he'd have, drawn some of those cards, but the second copies of them had been, Nourishes earlier on, the, Dream Petal Florist that he could use to get a cheap Malagos, and then Mally Swipe, early in the game, all of these kinds of options, then we might have had a slightly different story. But as it was, he just had pairs of useless cards throughout. There was nothing but 2 ofs in his hand, and it was the 2 ofs from the wrong half of the deck as well.
Yeah, no good having a pair of 2s in any way. So Bobbyex versus Roger. Roger taking the first game 1-0. As we said, this matchup looks pretty close to us, so it's by no means over. More of this series coming right up.
With the developers.
My battle cry upon coming into the room, it's hard to say what its effect would be in-game, but I'm sure it would probably ensue in some kind of 80s musical stinger.
I think it'd just be like an exasperated sigh.
Honestly, it'd probably be a laugh, because I just laugh all the time in any situation, and sometimes inappropriately.
I'm very tired in the mornings, and I always have meetings in the mornings, so I just kind of like sit down like...
I'm pretty sure I would not have a battle cry, and I would have stealth, because that is what I do all day on accident, is accidentally startle people that I just wanted to talk to.
Oh man, if I had my own battle cry, it would probably bring joy and a smile, put a smile on everyone's face.
You just open the door and like dun 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 dun, trumpets are thundering. It's like, who's? Oh, it's Josh again. Oh.
If I were going to try and not startle people, then my battle cry would probably be, hey, can I talk to you real quick?
I don't know if I'd have a voiceover. It'd be more of an aura where like you just enter the room and everyone just starts like laughing.
If I had a battle cry whenever I walked into the room, it would be to transform the color of a random person in the room's hair. Just like that.
Give that minion a turn to get ready.
Oh, where's your huffer? I'll take you on! Dragon Hawks forever! let me change your mind. Woohoo! Zombies! Go, one zombie! Get these stupid dragon hawks off my field! Get them the heck out of here! And the Lynxes are still back!
Greetings.
Boo, Lynxes!
Greetings. 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 Greetings.
We've got Roger currently leading the series 1-0 with a win with his Quest Rogue, but it's by no means over yet for Bobbyex. There's still plenty more games coming up. We can see the bans going out. It's actually Bobbyex lost his Rogue to the ban from Roger, and then Roger lost his Even Warlock. What do you make of this, the Quest Rogue being banned out specifically?
Well, I mean, I should have touched on this in the intro, really. The difference really being that Even Lock and the Mali Druid. I mentioned why it gave, in my opinion, an edge towards the Even Lock player, but probably didn't elaborate enough on why. It's because that deck is strong enough in the series that it can draw out a ban from the opponent, and essentially that means in a lineup which is then pretty much mirrored, you essentially have a free ban, right? We saw how easily Quest Rogue got through from Roger's side. He has the freedom because he doesn't have to ban Even Lock from Bobbyex. He can just say, all right, you don't get to play your Quest Rogue. It's insane in all of these matchups, but you can't have it.
Yeah, when the best of 5, when you get what I will, you won't see me, but air quotes put a free win, you're looking pretty good to win the series. Believe it or not, winning more games is good. But let's get into game number 2. Roger's going to be on the Death Rattle Hunter, and so is Bobbyex.
Straight away, you see the Nerubian Unraveler is being packed in there for Bobbyex, and Roger as well is playing 2 copies even in his Death Rattle Hunter. So it does seem that both of these players were somewhat teched out and prepared to play these mirror matches if it did come down to it. Not that the Death Rattle Hunter mirror is necessarily a huge one for the Nerubian Unraveler. It can definitely have an impact on the likes of Play Dead, just making the combo turns a little more costly, but they are prepared to be able to take on those cloning gallery priests and so on.
Right, I think often what the Unraveler does in this matchup is it's just another thing to play on those turns 6 and 7s when you don't have a lot to do with this deck. So if you just play, it's like if you were in a Stranglethorn Tiger in this deck if you didn't need tech cards. Well, that's just a solid play on turn 5, 6, or 7 in this deck, to be honest, because you can hero power with it as well. Like, it's just a solid card that might mess with your opponent, and that's just good. That's just okay, considering it's so much better in other matchups too.
It's in what I think is a designated tech card slot in the deck. Like, Death Rattle Hunter has this core of like 26 cards that it needs in order just to function. But then there are some like tech card slots where we are seeing, I don't know, Gluttonous Oozes,
Wing Blast,
Defender of Argus, Wing Blast in this case as well, but particularly if you want to look at like the 6-mana minion tech card slot, we used to see Mossy Horrors there when the big problem was Druid. But now, of course, the big problem potentially is more spell-based combo decks, so Nerubian Unraveler coming in to kind of take up that slack.
Yeah, and if you want just a very simple, straightforward example, Psychic Scream with Priest. You really want them to not do that, because that's one card that really messes with cards like cubes. So yeah, it's a really nice tool to just give your opponent a speed bump, regardless of how big that bump actually is. It's one of my favorite plays, honestly. I love it so much. Spider Bomb just on an empty board, just coin it out, or just play it on 3.
Really?
Well, what does your opponent do? It's kind of awkward. They spend a turn playing a minion that they know is going to die, and then you get to play another minion. Maybe not in this matchup because it is mirrored, so it gets a little bit trickier, but in general, you just lock out so much tempo from your opponent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just using Spider Bomb as a
counter. No,
Raven, calm down, okay? Deep breath. Take a moment if you need it. But yeah, it's just essentially using Spider Bomb as a 3-drop, right? Like, you could coin out a 3-drop here, right? Just a normally statted 3-drop and say the same thing, right? They're going to play a minion and it's going to trade and die. It's similar.
Mountain Giant in Even Lock.
Sure. That. Yeah. If you're going second and you coin out the Spider Bomb and somehow your Even Lock opponent is playing Mountain Giant in response to that, then...
You don't have to coin out. You can play it on 3 and you still go into Mountain Giant.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it can kill any minion. Tar Creeper, for example, so on.
No, I understand, and I'm agreeing with your point. I just think it's important to say that, like, it's it's Spider Bomb, which is a card that can kill anything, being used to actually deliberately kill something of lower value than it might do. Just functioning as a 3-drop in the deck, and that's okay.
And that's... Okay, so this game is progressing pretty quickly, because often, unless you do get the nuts, then you're not doing anything too crazy in Death Rattle Hunter for the first 4 turns or so. It's normally very reactive with flanking strikes, for example. But for now, the cube has gone down on the egg for Bobbyex, and now you just have to say he's leading the pack and he's ahead in this game because there's just so much more value already on the board.
Yeah, he's ahead right now in terms of board position and tempo, but the rest of his hand is not looking incredible compared to this Kathrena that we're looking down on the other side in Roger's hand. Looking thoughtful.
For a split second, because there are instances of like weird card interactions, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, so Wing Blast does say if a minion's died, it costs 1. Nerubian says spells cost more, but it does say it costs 1, so who wins? But really, I was just thinking that Wing Blast is about to cost 8 mana soon, which is going to be pretty funny. Yeah, these Nerubians are just probably going to headbutt each other at some point soon and just be like, well, okay.
Choosing to take the preemptive poke on the 5/4, meaning that if it does go into the Witchwood Grizzly, he can then attack it on the next turn as well to finish it off. It's probably a smart decision.
Yeah, I'd actually love the Nerubian this turn, purely because Howlmaster Shaw with that Spider Bomb rushing is very, very powerful indeed.
I agree, because the play you would like to do this turn costs 6, and the play you would like to do next turn costs 7, and that makes sense.
But the play I'd really like to do this turn is the Howlmaster Shaw Spider Bomb.
Yeah, okay. The play I'd really like to do this turn costs me 18 mana.
So yeah, play the one that costs 6. Just gonna go for Wing Blast.
So I think this is a nod towards the play that Roger did make on the previous turn that I was talking about coming in, where he preemptively poked the Devil Saw. So because of that, Bobbyex did not want to use that Devil Saw to trade and wanted to protect it. So essentially, instead of playing a fresh 5/5 himself with the Nerubian Unraveler, he essentially just retained an old one on the board by using Wing Blast to not value trade and just send that damage face. I'm on board with it.
I wonder.
I'm interested in how Bobbyex is going to decide to utilize, or maybe even not, just these eggs, because eggs are a weird thing in this matchup where your opponent often just doesn't proc them, because Hunter can very easily not do that. It's not like you know, Warlock decks that are forced to use AoE clears, for example. You can use it as a deterrent for that. Hunter can actually just dodge that, because even the Rexar just does 2. So these eggs are going to be interested to see if this kind of drops the power level of Bobbyex's board quite dramatically when this cube dies. And good to note, of course, that Kathrena is getting closer and closer for Roger, and that is normally a card that when you have it and your opponent doesn't in the mirror, you normally just win, because they often can't come back from that kind of power.
Big 50-50, gets the 5/4, which means he can now completely trade through this cube, leaving essentially 0 power on the board, which is a huge win for him considering how much pressure he was facing down.
My pack will hunt you down.
That's actually a really good draw. Not so much because it's Keleseth, but because it's not a Spider Bomb that goes into a Spider Bomb.
Oh, it was hooking left, Raven. It caught the left edge of that Devil Saw egg.
Yeah, Shaw's just like, wasn't even close. Oh. Okay, this Kathrena's getting progressively worse. Is that just one Grizzly that Roger has left in the tank? Oh no, 1 Devil Saw as well. He runs double Devil Saw, King Crush, double Grizzly.
Yep.
Unity, precision, perfection.
Zuliak's draw is beautiful for Bobbyex though, and luckily his last couple of draws have just been enough to maintain this tempo lead, because he needed to do it, because if he didn't find more gas, you know, just a couple of Devil Saw eggs that he would have been left with were not going to be enough against this Kathrena coming down.
And most importantly, they allowed him to retain the Spider Bomb. That Keleseth, I think, was huge, because you would have had to run the Spider Bombs into each other just to get them killed and maybe get the 5/5.
Yeah.
But that was absolutely huge. So even if something problematic came out of that Kathrena, it was already dead to a large extent. So Bobbyex very, very quickly evens this matchup and in that Death Rattle Hunter mirror. So yeah, this is still very, very close in this series, I think, Sol.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming down to almost direct mirrors at this point with that Even Lock banned out, the Quest Rogue picking up a win on one side and being banned on the other. We've got just the remaining decks to win with the mirror. We've got the Clone Priest, and then that Mali Druid needs to find a way over the line for Bobbyex as well. It's already failed at the first attempt.
Yeah, it's good, and I genuinely feel like it is just down to this Druid, because you look at the Clone Priest, it's got a mirror, and then a matchup I feel is favored in the Death Rattle Hunter. So then it really is just, well, you...
Double Nerubian Unraveler Death Rattle Hunter, though?
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, he's playing the 2, isn't he?
That starts to get a little bit spooky.
Yeah, I take it all back now. I'm generally just unsure as to what's going on in that. But, it's a tough one, isn't it? I don't know. It really does, for me, just come down to, well, you brought Mali Druid. How confident is anyone that brings Mali Druid? They must be very, but it's not really a deck that's been shining recently,
Yeah,
is it?
I wonder about the people who brought Druid in general, because it's not a class that I've had a huge amount of success with or faith in since the Nourish nerfs and the Wild Growth nerf. There's always loyalists though, right? There's always combo Druid loyalists, be it, you know, Hakar Druid, what used to be just Azalina Togwaggle Druid, or be it Mali Druid, whatever end game it is, various people over the years have really, really loved that kind of deck with Druid. So some people just do have a wealth of experience built up with it, and you were talking earlier about the idea of comfort picks, and we, you know, had a little moment about whether comfort picks are a thing, or whether, you know, your job as a professional player is to make sure you are comfortable with whatever you think statistically gives you the best chance of winning. But the reality is people do pick comfort picks. It is a real thing.
Anyone who says they don't is a liar, in my opinion.
People have biases. Hearthstone players aren't robots and never will be, and thank heavens for that.
Yeah, that'd be a really weird interview process for a start. But yeah, let's see what's going to go on in this game. Roger with the Hunter does have that Kelseth on 2, options on 3 as well with this egg. And also, because of this specific matchup, and you know, there are a few others similar, you can just flank and strike his egg to activate it. What are you flanking striking in Druid early game?
Yeah,
not a lot, Sol.
I think the 5/7 cube off the top might just have a little something to say about it, but before that came along, yeah, very much a play that was in the window of possibility.
Do you think you ever want to coin a Rek'Sai in this matchup?
No.
Okay.
I mean, with a certain hand that has nothing else to do, sure. With a hand that has just minions and things to play, no. I will spend my mana doing immediate things that get guys in play, rather than, you know, spending 6 mana essentially doing nothing.
Also, this is representing nearly half of BobbyeX's life total, right?
Yep.
Right now with just 12 damage on board, and the cube's still gonna splurt out some other things after it dies, and Arcane Tyrant just not doing too much to fight for the board. We might just see Flabidin's Floop as well come down. Just have some minions to fight with.
In my experience,
I guess not now because the hit.
Yeah, in my experience in this matchup, you very often, almost always, need a Malagos swing turn, similar to what I was talking about in the Quest Rogue matchup, in order to win the game, because it's not like you can attrition them out like you can with like an Odd Paladin or a pure aggro deck, right? Like, it's not like you survive, you get a big spreading plague down, and the game's over because they can't beat it, right? So I personally don't think the additional 3/4 there was a big enough upside to take you away from the potential of Libidinous Floop's swipe with a copied Malagos later in the game.
Yeah, interesting, because my view was, are you even going to get to the late game?
He's already in the late game. He's got 10 mana next turn. What are you talking about?
I mean, before you're dead, basically, but yes, fine. The Malagos and the Spellstone is available, even a Faceless Manipulator as well. But there's also just a lot of damage right there, and there's a Nerubian Unraveler, which, although you could say, well, can be killed by the Malagos, not without a hero power or a spell being casted it, so that is going to be a little bit frustrating for Bobbyex to deal with. So there's 10 damage available this turn. It's yeah, there's no way with only 6 mana for Roger that Stitch Tracker is going to be able to pull him anything here. They could finish up the game this turn.
Nope.
And the problem now is if you put too much damage into the Malygos, is it just worse? Because you can't win the game.
Yeah, the problem with...
I think I like going face. Your opponent's not got many cards.
I am
It's just his
also
move fire.
a big fan of going face here, but the problem is that like the Unraveler kind of quote lockout turn isn't really a lockout because the one thing they want to do is still possible even if you play Unraveler. So I do kind of like making the board state more resilient and potentially pushing just max damage.
Whoa, whoa. Wait, what? I like putting my opponent to 2 health that turn, so they can't. They don't have much leeway with the cards available in hand. Spell songs. Can you explain that trade to me, Saul? I'm actually just confused.
I admit I'm struggling.
The circle of life is over.
See, swipes were extremely scary there, so he wants to potentially mitigate the threat of swipe coming down. So I guess his thinking is worst case scenario if my opponent does have the option that, you know, clears my board or at least, you know, pops the cube, leaves the egg, 0 power in play. Essentially, I can then Rexar on the following turn to be able to deal with the Malygos. Whereas if he just goes face, yes, my opponent is at 2, but if they then are able to swipe clear the board and just hero power out of range of my hero power, I then have no way of killing this Malygos for the remainder of the game, which is logical. But it does now mean you suffer a little bit here, and I think in the long run, Roger's play does work out reasonable because he knows he's happy to reset for the longer game because he does have plenty more gas in hand and a Rexar to go, so he doesn't have to win immediately. Because there was a very real risk of that situation going wrong if there was a swipe in hand for Bobbyex.
Yeah, there was. I feel like you would be forcing your opponent to hero power every turn then because you can keep minus, like, 2 off the health.
I mean, there's branching paths and Malfurion and all kind of things.
There is, but I think when your opponent's on 4 cards, you know, there's a certain level of mindset of going, well, if you don't have it, I just win. And this is a very important game to win, going 2-1 up in a championship match. I don't know. I think I would have gone aggressive. Maybe I just go face too much. Maybe there is such a thing, so I don't know.
Yeah, there is definitely serious fault in assuming your opponent has everything when they only have 4 cards in their hand.
Okay, so there is Houndmaster, which allows crazy things to happen in most cases. The Spider Bomb can't actually kill itself off with a trade, so it gets a little bit dicey. Is there any way you can... Yeah, Roger's just suffering because he's a hunter right now and just doesn't have 10 mana like the Druid has for a few turns. Because
Spider Bomb play dead Terrastale Stalker here just to take 2 shots at the Mally. If he kills this second Mally, he's essentially won the game. So he has 2 shots at it here. That's a 33, and this is now a 50-50! And that is a potential disaster for him. Bobbyex needs help, but he has Nourish, giving him 3 shots at pulling this out now. He needs to make this one Malygos that he has remaining do the world of work for him, and those are not the tools he needs.
Yeah, the benefit of the play from Roger is that, guess what, friend? The Spider Bomb's still on the board. It will still snipe someone unless there's a silence that doesn't exist in Bobbyex's deck. So, yes, he might not die this turn, but the bomb will get the work done because there are just limited options that would negate that happening. Right. Spider Bomb almost... well, maybe not now. Maybe just play Devil Saw.
This beast will not be tamed.
Oh, wow. I mean, when there are additional copies and you're not tracking and deleting the other ones, that's a perfectly reasonable situation.
Yep. I actually did kind of wonder why Devil Saw wasn't the play there. Kill the Mally with a Devil Saw, you still have the bomb down. You push more damage, and you have a Devil Saw on the board.
All good
You've
points.
seen one naturalize already? It kills a Plague token?
Yeah. My only real counterpoint to that is after he's killed this Malygos, what else does he really need to bother with? I guess there is a Lich King left hanging around, which is the last like real threat that he's dealing with.
Do you ever have to... Okay, you slow play the game. You set up for a King Crush cube. Bobbyex facelesses your cube and then naturalizes it with the King Crush or Devil Saws in, and you lose.
The eternal hunt has begun.
Yep.
Legal Hearthstone players, that's all I would say.
Those were all words.
Points for ending the game quickly with big minions instead of waiting. The most mediocre Alexstrasza you've ever seen, with both players being on around 15 health.
Yeah. Bobbyex wisely taking the play that heals himself for 3 as opposed to his opponent for 1.
Agreed.
High-level Hearthstone right there.
I mean, with the armor totals, that just confuses matters, to be honest.
My pack will hunt you down.
Cute. Yeah, I like it.
See Roger playing around the Faceless into naturalized play by trading off the cube. This Lich King's going to have to do a mighty level of work.
I want to clarify, you're laughing. He actually is. Like, he genuinely
I'm just laughing because I brought it up earlier.
Right, no, like, that is an out. Like, in this matchup, you don't want to give your opponent a Faceless on cube, especially when, as you said, they play the card Naturalize that can create havoc for you. I think that play was very nicely executed by Roger on a number of levels. He saved the Spider Bomb because he knew Lich King is a more important card to have an emergency button against than the Alexstrasza was. And he also got development out of a cube in a situation where he could pop it open immediately and get value and not offer that out of the Faceless to his opponent. He built a 2-mana Angry Chicken. Sorry, I just noticed that.
All important factors. You know, you're talking about one thing, but the other important things do happen while we are talking. We cannot say more than one word at a time, unfortunately. Death Grip. Okay, probably the best pull, to be honest, for the Death Grip, with everything that's left. Being able to Faceless one of the Grizzlies is nice, just so it actually gets the 12 health as opposed to playing the Grizzly from hand. Right. Not the 12 health. Devil Saw, King Crush, you know, these kind of make one of the few minions in the game or played right now that makes Grizzly not look that cool with its 12 health.
I believe all of his Spider Bombs are gone at this point. I'm not sure. I think he's used 2, and I don't think either of them were additional copies from Stitch Trackers or anything of the like.
Is he looking for a cube? He has 1 left, right?
I believe so.
Because then you could just play a King Crush. You've seen both Naturalizes. There's no real way it dies. Play King Crush. If they've not killed him normally, next turn you have cube. Played it.
Yeah, Bobbyex actually only plays 1 Faceless Manipulator, in his deck, so he's now safe from any of those threats coming down, having seen it being used to copy the 312.
Yep, pushing 6 pretty straightforward here, and I do not believe there is a card in Bobbyex's deck that can save him now. It's 15 damage on board. Probably a little bit annoying actually for Roger that he had to play the King Crush and not the Devil Saw there. Because the 1 health difference, or 1 damage difference, should I say. He couldn't save the King Crush for charge damage on top of a Devil Saw, but it didn't matter. Roger takes the win in game number 3, going 2-1 up. But I'll have to say, at least in this series, Death Rattle Hunter's been getting some work done.
Yeah, not a...
Quite convincing.
A deck that's really kind of plummeted in popularity since we did perhaps last championships and even playoffs before this. And because of those nerfs that came in that really hit Druid, Death Rattle Hunter was kind of a deck that got weirdly caught in the crossfire, because one of the big reasons why you would play Death Rattle Hunter is to farm the Druids. So when the Druids got nerfed and therefore got less popular, there was suddenly less of a reason to be playing that Death Rattle Hunter deck. But we're seeing it back with a vengeance, and both times I've seen it on stream at least and paid attention, it's looked pretty impressive doing the job it needs to do.
Yeah, it's been a general surprise for me throughout the whole day, to be honest, how much Hunter we've even seen be allowed to be played, because it's the highest brought class of them all so far. It's I don't know this for sure, I'm probably going to be wrong, but it feels like it has the highest win rate we've seen on stream. I feel like we've seen Hunters demolish left, right, and
Bold
center.
statement, Raven.
I do go crazy sometimes, so I go pretty wild.
Feels like it has the highest win rate.
It feels like maybe.
It's
I'm not sure about this.
definitive as Raven ever gets.
Well, that's going to be it for this game. We've got plenty more coming up, and maybe only one more as Roger could take the win and take the series. But I'm sure Bobbyex is going to be fighting back strong. So don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back.
Well played!
In this video, we'll share some pro tips that top competitors like Purple use to dominate the late game in Hearthstone. So get ready to take long-term control and start winning more hotly contested late game scenarios. Our first late game pro tip is, know your win condition. What does that even mean? Win condition is a term that many pros use to describe the most common way a deck achieves victory. In the late game, you'll have seen most of your cards, so your deck should be winning its intended way. Some decks have very specific win conditions, like Togwaggle Druid, but most archetypes have a general win condition. Control decks seek to win via fatigue, by using their resources to efficiently deal with their opponent's threats. Aggro decks seek to win by creating damage races, where their more efficiently costed minions can overwhelm the opponent. And mid-range decks win by encouraging repetitive one-for-one trades, allowing their inherently sticky minions and card advantage spells to out-pressure the opponent. Recognizing both your opponent's win condition and your own is crucial to dominating the late game, so always try to steer matches towards game states where your deck is strongest. And our second late game pro tip is AVT, always value trade. Value trading means killing an opposing minion with an attack that leaves your minion still alive. This produces card advantage, since your opponent has lost a card on the board, but you haven't. And card advantage is crucial to winning the late game. Why? Because in long Hearthstone games, both players will have used most of their cards. And when you're out of spells and minions, you're out of ways to win. So pick up value trades wherever possible. They help almost every win condition, whether that's by preserving cards on the board to end the game before fatigue against control decks, or by leaving more minions on board to go face for aggro decks. The pros know that navigating the late game is key to winning both on the ladder and in the Hearthstone Championship Tour. So use these late game pro tips and level up your game in preparation for Hearthstone Esports 2019 program. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, brought to you by the coaches at GamerSensei, please visit playhearthstone.com/esports for more of the Well Played series and all things Hearthstone Esports.
Well played!
What? I'm not doing this.
He didn't even get to hear my British accent. Bollocks! What tomfoolery is this? Balderdash? Rubbish? Malarkey? Poppycock? Codswallop? London Bridge is falling down? Tea and crumpets! I'm so smart and Raven's dumb.
Don't appreciate that impression of Sottle, to be honest, from Admirable there. The producer of those and the person who wrote the scripts assures me that line was not included. I don't believe him at all.
Oh, he's like, not only was it in that script, but he actually writes the script for all my casting. That's the reason why I'm so mean to you. I'm just following what Mike says.
It's just not a surprise whatsoever. Oh. So apparently I'm getting these scripts sent to me as proof, but maybe he just wrote that 5 minutes ago. I don't know. You can never trust that guy. But anyway, let's go focus on more important things as we get into this series.
How well they matched my shirt.
That was pretty impressive. Yeah. That was actually, believe it or not Sottle's shirt.
I mean, it fit TJ as opposed to me, so I think it's fairly obvious it wasn't the same.
Hey, look,
shirt.
you never know tricks of the camera, okay?
Right,
So
yeah.
production value, as you can tell from these opens, is through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back into this series into more serious matters as we move on. Roger versus Bobbyex. Roger just coming off the back of a very, very convincing win with his Death Rattle Hunter. Only has his Priest left, whereas Bobbyex just plugging away with the Druid right now, and it's not been looking great, to be honest.
It hasn't. Not up until this point. It is slightly more entering its element when it comes up against the Clone Priest, though. It's able to pull itself outside of most of the easiest burst ranges, so quite often it does come down to a minion battle. Raven is excitedly gesticulating.
So basically what you don't know is I've got an envelope that says the turn 9 clone win we talked about was not going to be the first match we cast of the day. It was actually going to be the last match we cast of the day.
I'm sure that's just as likely to appear as Mike's scripts.
I'm feeling confident about this one. I think the cloning gallery is going to come out on 9, and it may win the game. Very loosely interpreted. Call it my speciality. Bobbyex, though, no ramp, which means this Druid is going to continue to just plug away, I guess, and keep chugging along, trying to get something going. But I feel like the second you give Clone Priest time is the second you lose.
Yes, but there is Twig coming out from Bobbyex, which is his own kind of huge ramping tool, massive burst combo in the end, potential with it. I will say this deck from Roger, there's kind of a false equivalence here in terms of how likely it is to be able to do the explosive Xerix cloning OTK style thing, because he's refined the deck. It's what they call the 4-minion version. There's only the Radiant Elementals, the Vel and the Malagos, and a Ziliax in there in terms of the minion package. So he draws minions a lot less often than anyone else does with a different build of the deck, but he is still just as likely to draw a Radiant Elemental, a Velen, or a Malagos, which will then mess up the combo. And he sacrifices the Gilded Gargoyles, which can potentially be used to compensate for not getting as many Radiant Elementals as you need to send out burst damage.
Okay, well, Bobbyex is at least doing something early game. Does have the Twig down, as you said, and that Tyrant getting the work done already. Means that this Velen is already dead, but I think most importantly, he gets put in the pool. So the Eternal Servitude can be used if Roger so chooses next turn to just put a 7/7 on the board. And these early game moments are less, especially not against aggro, are less about the abilities of the cards and more about them just being big dudes you can keep on the board and maybe get some extra damage down.
As of right now, with a Mind Blast and a Smite, and with Clone Gallery in hand and no minions drawn just as yet, Roger is capable of 34 from hand on turn 9. Sounds fair, right?
Just don't branching path, Bobby. And
we was at 44 already.
Yeah, but the branching path definitely isn't helping this fight, and he fell into it a few times.
Naturalize, fantastic card in the matchup, because conversely to Common Wisdom, your opponent drawing more cards actually reduces their ability to kill you a lot of the time in this matchup.
Yeah, that's silly. And
there goes a blast. Now with one blast drawn, one burned, there is no more from Shadow Visions, but there is still a Holy Smite in there, which actually a lot of the time is a better card to duplicate, but I will say that's more true in a world where you have Gilded Gargoyles, because additional coins can be used to throw out very cheap Holy Smites, right? Like 1 mana for 14 damage is a better ratio than 2 mana for 20.
Yeah, I will say, though, also not quite as good in a class that can generate double their health because of armor. So this is, I feel, going to be an uphill climb, but I will say that people talk a lot about the burst that Clone Priest can do. They maybe don't talk as much about just generating endless waves of 7/7s and 8/8s, which can often get the job done as well.
I agree, Raven.
I've heard hitting people in the face with very large minions often leads to a win.
I'm glad you're finally coming around. The far more important part of the deck, playing and reviving.
I'd say it happens about 10% of the time.
Okay.
90% clone on 9. Victory.
Just when I thought you joined the coalition for reason, you had to send it back into the depths of lunacy.
I will never join a club you are in charge of, Sottle. No matter what the name of that club is.
Is that Woody Allen?
Did I just random?
No, you didn't.
I was like, I'm just clever.
There's a quote. He wouldn't want to be a member of a club that would accept him as a member. I believe that is a Woody Allen quote.
That feels more like something you would say.
What? I would love to join a club where every member was me. That sounds amazing.
But then who would you shout at?
Just have endless arguments. Fantastic.
Okay, well, we see the Taunt's not going to be doing too much in this matchup, so Bobbyex, of course, going for these poisonous spiders instead of the Malfurion, as they do, in a roundabout way, just gain more value most of the time, but it's a pretty sick mass hysteria though.
Yeah.
Guaranteed clear. I can do mass hysteria maths. It's actually going to be mass hysteria, isn't it?
There's not a whole lot else going on right
no,
now.
that's it. Just hovering over each card. It's like Spellstone. Nope. Spellstone. Nope.
Yep.
Can't clone. Okay. Guess I'm spending 5 mana to kill the 2 1/2s. Or not?
Not all
okay.
who wander are lost.
Fully upgraded Spellstone this early on is pretty nice for Roger, although with his version of the deck, it's not like an enormous amount of value does come out of that Spellstone because 4 minions is the maximum he's able to revive.
And most importantly right now, it's just another Velen ×2 in hand, because it will only regenerate that. Surprised generally that Roger didn't just go for the turn 9 win, to be honest. It's,
My thoughts are plagued.
Sick of your crap.
You mean my codswallop?
Yes.
I've got to be careful with saying things like that because I could slip into certain words that I'm just not allowed to say on broadcast. Like, but it's okay in the UK.
Yeah, I mean...
Is that our excuse and we sticking with it?
Essentially every word in British is swearing.
Is eternal. My turn is not.
Dispel just kind of a whiff, to be honest. There's not really a lot you look into silence in this matchup. Roger. It's like he's going to crank things up a little bit, and to be honest, realistically, is there any reason not to? Because you have the Spellstone to summon the minions back, right? Like
he has Vivid Nightmare here as well, actually. He has enormous amounts of damage because Vivid Nightmare can double again. And he still has, with both Radiants in there, he still has Mind Blast Holy Smite to come out.
How much damage is that then? 40, 28?
68?
Teamwork.
Just one more than 67?
I mean, yes, I'm with you. Bold statement. It's lethal.
Quickly.
Roger's like, does doubling double work? How does that work again? Because it isn't.
Right, it's the order in which the operations are applied,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
When does it double, before
Yeah.
or after the 5 that's added? I
Well,
believe
that says
I believe
28
that is 40
as far
and
as I'm
28 from
concerned.
how I understand Hearthstone mechanics, and yes,
Okay.
it is. And Raven, after beating into the ground all day about how you just play Xeric's Cloning Gallery and win the game, Roger played Xeric's Cloning Gallery and dealt 68 damage with 3 additional cards.
I do feel, congratulations to Roger for winning, but I feel like it's more of a victory for me than it is Roger at this point. As it did take a while, but we got there. I called it. I misplaced the envelope that said this was going to happen. I'm sure TJ has it somewhere. All the time, Subtle. All the time.
I should be the bigger man and let him have his most minor of victories. But he clearly said turn 9 or before. And what turn was that,
said
ladies
Clone
and
Gallery costs 9. He never listens to me, guys. He never listens to me. It's a tiring job, but someone's got to do it. But seriously, as we rein it back in just a little bit, congratulations to Roger, and that was just a very explosive end to what I felt was a very close series, even though the score may not reflect that.
Yes, I think it was a series where he had an edge moving into it because of that even lock that he'd brought, which in this particular mirrored match lineup forced a ban. And essentially, the inverse of that is that it gave him a free ban, which he used to then remove Quest Rogue from the equation. His Quest Rogue picked up an easy victory, and that really set the stall out for the series, where he was always playing from ahead. And you see now he's going to go through to fight the might of Bunny Hopper, who is really many, if not most players, pick for best player in the world currently. Obviously, we've seen the dominance of Hunter Ace and Just Saying go through all the tour stop seasons, but Bunny Hopper has achieved just as much, if not more, than those people in terms of high-profile tournaments while playing part-time. And now he's gone full beast mode. Bunny Hopper is full head in the game, PhD done, full-time Hearthstone. That's terrifying.
I feel like it's just comparable to Jaws. All this time, you've just been
No.
hearing, no, it's just under the water. Now it's like Bunny Hopper's like, oh, I'm done with my work, so let's go. But yeah, kind of universally the most feared player in this tournament. But Bobbyex is not out. He'll be facing Lion King, I believe, in Group D in that lower bracket match. So they're not knocked out yet. They have to lose again. But, you know, it's going to be a strong match coming up at a later date, which is Roger versus Bunny Hopper. That's going to be a cracker. But I believe, it's a Bunny Hopper then. I believe Roger is ready for an interview. So let's swing it over there.
Thank you very much, Raven and Sottle. I'm joined by Roger, who's able to win his series pretty convincingly over Bobbyex. I wanted to ask him first, how does he feel about the pressure? There's a lot of attention on Roger, to say the least, right now. And I think a lot of fans both are cheering and watching him to see what would happen.
现在有很多粉丝都在看你的比赛，那你觉得会压力很大吗？
很大，我压力很大。
Yeah, I have a lot of pressure.
Sure, and how do you deal with that? Because I know you're streaming a lot these days. I think you're Taiwan's most popular streamer there. So how do you manage that pressure, and how do you divide your time to competing versus streaming?
那你在台湾是一个非常知名的实况主，那你平常是怎么样分配自己的时间，然后又是怎样调配自己的压力？
大部分时间其实都在玩一些其他的游戏，就想说分散一下注意力，然后大概快到比赛的时候才会比较开始认真的准备。对。
I actually spend a lot of time to play other games and only focusing on practicing just when close to the tournament.
It's been a few years since we've seen you compete in Hearthstone on U.S. soil. I think the last time was like 4 years ago. You know, how are you enjoying America coming back this time around? Are you going to do anything fun since you last traveled here?
距离你上次来美国比赛已经大概是4年前了。那你这次回来美国再次比赛，你有什么心得吗？你有没有去哪里玩？
我前几天有去一下那个好莱坞那边，可是他们那边刚好在办奥斯卡，然后对我是很久没来美国比赛，因为前阵子表现都不是很好，结果这次来我觉得蛮开心的。
I'm happy to be here again. I went to Hollywood a few days ago, and I happened to we encountered an Oscar ceremony. Yeah, and I enjoyed it a lot.
All right. My last question is, you're going up against Bunny Hopper tomorrow, I believe. Do you feel confident going up against him? Because everyone's predicting him to crush the group. Are you going to be able to upset him?
你明天会遇上 Bunny Hopper， 那大家都觉得他可能是这次比赛里面最强劲的对手。那你有什么想法吗？
我好希望没有明天就不用遇到他，因为我觉得感觉遇到他，而且他已经有那个就是门票了，然后还要这样来阻挡我们的路，我觉得很辛苦。但我明天还是会尽力想出办法去赢他。
So I really want to skip tomorrow because I don't really want to meet him because he already has the qualification to the World Champ, and however I'll still work hard and try to figure out a way to beat him.
All right, congratulations, Roger. Thank you for your time. And with that, let's head over back to Raven Sottle at the desk.